So as we've been talking about, there's a real concern that people won't be able to put food on the table under the Donald Trump shutdown. And then these are the headlines today. Trump administration must release billions in SNAP funds, judge says. And then it also says as soon as possible, right? Officials must act as soon as possible. Now, you know how the Trump people are probably going to play this. They're going to try to slow walk it. They're going to try to appeal it. They do anything that they can. This is the Trump people to basically burn down America. It's ridiculous. And when you put this together, the other stuff that the White House is doing today, it'll make sense of what their strategy is. This also came out today. White House restricts media access in key areas of the West Wing, right? So they don't want the press to report stuff. That's basically what it boils down to, right? They don't want people to know all of the crazy policies that they're doing. And we saw this also with the Pentagon, where they wanted all the press corps to basically sign a loyalty pledge and only do stories that they approve, right? So they just basically want to do, you're going to put out our propaganda and our propaganda only. And pretty much everyone walked out. Even Fox News did, which is pretty crazy. That's how nuts the people are over at the Trump administration. And then the people that are left are basically the MyPillow guy, for reals. Like it was like the MyPillow media group or whatever was signed up on this. And then when you look at the way that they make arguments of why you should go along with them, MAGA congressman tells SNAP recipients to, quote, stop smoking crack in bonkers post. Okay. I guess it's all your fault again, right? And then Fox News, when you look at what they're reporting, and I know it's crazy when you go through this stuff, but I just want to show you how to put all this together. This is from Fox regarding the SNAP judgment recently, right? The food money. Reopen the government. President Trump says the administration is seeking clarity on whether SNAP can be funded in a government shutdown, but emphasizes lawyers, quote, do not think we have legal authority, right? Seeking clarity. That's how Fox does. And just you know, you guys know this. If the shoe were on the other foot, if people weren't going to be able to put food on their table under, you know, Obama or something, Fox would be all over the place. Obama, you know, hates food, that kind of stuff. And in fact, I remember during the Obama time, they were criticizing Michelle Obama because Michelle was like, hey, kids should have vegetables, as if that's some crazy thing to say, right? But Fox, that's how they play their game. And I want to say this, guys, when we go through this stuff every day, I really appreciate having you in the community because it helps all of us make it through this insane time. And I always say the same thing. I can't cry every single day because it's just too stressful. We need each other's support. You know, sometimes we make jokes. Sometimes we, you know, do scream occasionally. You have to because you just feel so frustrated. I know. And people also say, like, I'm just shaking my, you know, fist at the screen all the time every time you see Trump, what they're doing. But I do want to share some of your thoughts because it helps us all get through it and also sort of sees things in a different way. So, for example, Will says today, just saying the French Revolution was all about food and it didn't end well for the rich. And Trump knows nothing about history. And I'll say this, you hit the nail on the head, right? This is something that you get too far out of touch with the people you're supposed to be serving, right? You're supposed to be a public servant. I mean, people are obviously going to get upset. And especially when you're talking about just basic things like food. This is a real problem. And I think, in my opinion, I keep saying this, I think there's going to be a real change in the U.S. after this. At least I hope so. But this is part of what we have to do every day. It's like a information war constantly because the Trump people, basically at this stage, their strategy is they're not necessarily going to change their policies from the Trump people. It's more like they're just trying to hide it from you. Like they don't want press to cover what they're doing. That's why they restrict White House access, or the same with the Pentagon. But because all people have to do is just know the truth, right? Here's another person. This is Lewis. Lewis says, bathrooms are where state secrets are stored. It's pretty funny, actually. I hadn't thought of it that way. Because if we look at just literally what Trump is saying, this is what they were saying when people are struggling with food, people are struggling with inflation. Trump's tweeting about bathrooms, right? And I told you guys before, I'm just like, what's this Republican obsession with bathrooms? They're always in the bathroom stuff. And so he's like bragging about gold bathrooms and stuff like that, like tearing down the White House, gold bathrooms. But people are struggling with food. That's who these Trump people are. Just all I have to do is just show you who they are. Another person comments. This is from Red. Red says, DJT wants hungry people to revolt so he can impose the Insurrection Act. Same for unpaid workers. I'll just say this. we know that Trump, like their whole goal here is, okay, how can we block food? How can we shut down the government? And how can we sic the military on the USA, right? So I wouldn't be shocked here. And Trump, in his own words, has been talking about, oh, I can do the Insurrection Act whenever I want. And this is, again, remember, Trump's strategy for their people is just restrict press access. That's their strategy. And there's something, too, I wanted to bring up, which I think, I love our community because you guys always have some interesting insight. And this is sort of why you listen to lots of people, because you get different points of view. So, for example, I don't think this is covered in the American media at all. And I know there's a lot of stuff to cover, but here in Korea, this is actually a pretty big story, right? So this is Karen Levitt. And it was actually her and those are both the communication people for the Trump administration. It says here, White House press secretary buys Korean skincare products during visit. It was actually all over our media. And Karen Levitt actually put this as the reason. There's two reasons why we know. So one is she literally put it on her social media. It was on her Instagram. I showed you guys this before. And then people saw her shopping, right? So we saw exactly where she's shopping. She had a list of what she wanted to get. And it was interesting because people brought up some really good points regarding Karen Levitt buying Korean products. And this is what you guys said in our community. I'll tell you guys how good of comments that we have when we go through this stuff. Karen says, will Karen Levitt be paying the tariffs on her purchases at customs? That is a fantastic question. And this would be a great question for reporters to ask. This is why you want transparency. Now, this is a reality. A lot of people buy stuff abroad and they don't pay the tariffs on this stuff, right? They don't claim anything as they go through the border. And anyone who's traveled, you know this. But I'll just say this, but for someone like a Karen Levitt or any of the White House staff, like these time officials, you should be in compliance with this stuff. And it's ridiculously hypocritical when you're doing this, right? So and just put it together because listen to other comments here. This was someone from the Political Cat says, Yeji, please address Karen Levitt's shopping trip versus Tory Branham. And if you remember Tory Branham, and this must be a long-time follower of our channel because that was the person who claimed that she called the ice on the Hyundai, right? You remember this person in Georgia? And Tory was telling everyone in a prior video that, everyone around the world wants to move to Georgia so that they can shop at Walmart. And yes, he really did say that. If you follow my channel, you'll know Tory Branham said that thing. And the comment even addressed it. It says, right, please address Karen Levitt's shopping trip versus Tory Branham's comments about South Koreans desperately crossing the U.S. border to shop at Walmart. Korean beauty products are sought around the world and are top-line products. Nobody's rushing to buy Walmart beauty brands. But this is, a really good point because when, people in the White House or whatever, like their own people are bragging about, hey, we went to Korea to buy stuff, right? And if you think about the Trump administration, they always try to tell you that, USA is the best at everything. We got the best products in the whole world. We don't need the world at all. But their own people are bragging about buying stuff in another country. And then remember the Trump people, if you try to do this, if you try to order something from another country, you're going to be paying the tariffs. So that's an interesting question whether or not Karen Levitt will pay the tax on this stuff. That's an interesting question. And that's why you'd want literally press coverage on this issue. And you're probably thinking, wow, our community is smart. I wouldn't have picked up on that one. And then someone made a joke, quote, this is from Tin, it would not surprise me if Karen Levitt stole the towels from the hotel. So that's a joke. So I'll say is that it wouldn't surprise me either, but we have no evidence of that stuff. So again, I tell you guys this stuff. Sometimes you got to laugh. Sometimes you got to cry on these things. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I'll go with that. But what's going on with the White House press thing? The White House said Friday that reporters could no longer access an area in the West Wing known as the upper press that houses the offices of key communications staff members, triggering pushback from the White House correspondents, who said the move would hurt the press' ability to cover the president. And I think the argument they made was like, well, because of the construction that we're doing, and this is their own doing, now we have, private conversations and parts of the White House we wouldn't normally have. I think that's the argument that they were making. This is what it says. The White House said the decision to restrict access to room 140 was grounded in national security because the, quote, recent structural changes to the U.S. National Security Council, White House communications staff will now be, quote, routinely engaging with sensitive material. And then they'll say in order to protect such material and maintain coordination between National Security Council and White House communications staff, right? They had to do that to room 140. That was in a memo. The White House Correspondents Association pushed back, and this is what they said. They said, quote, the new restrictions hinder the press corps' ability to question officials and ensure transparency and hold the government accountable to the detriment of the American public. So I'll let you guys be the judge of who to believe on that one. But, the Trump people can't hide everything forever. So, for example, I saw that Trump was partying and Halloween, but I didn't know this was the theme. This is sort of something that, when I go through everything every day, I get more information. It's like, okay, I see what they're doing. This is what they're doing. So I guess the theme of Trump's Halloween party was Gatsby, which is basically celebrating wealth. That's basically what it is, like Roaring Twenties. If you guys know the book, which was basically required in high school, I read it. It's actually my favorite book, to be very frank. I think that's the best American novel. And you could argue other books, but I like Gatsby. I read that one. But yes, this is what it's about. And it's interesting because it captures the Trump administration, right? This is like 100 years later, which is literally right before the crash. Then you go into the Depression era. But if you know the story of the Gatsby, it's basically no matter how much money you have, doesn't necessarily be happiness, right? Like chasing money your whole life isn't necessarily going to get you happiness. And it's interesting that that's what they're celebrating at this place while people are starving, that's the Trump people. And when you look at the coverage of Fox News, and it's interesting, it's similar to how they always do stuff. When there's something that may be negative for Trump, they just go neutral in how they cover it. It says, just in, President Trump spotted dining at Mar-a-Lago on Halloween, right? That's how Fox covers it. Or when they cover the bathroom issue, which I think is damaging, Trump reveals first photos after Lincoln bedrooms renovation in the White House. Like they literally just factual. And how they would play this if it would be opposite, shoe on the other foot. For me, the Halloween thing, I agree that it's tone deaf, but it's Halloween. They're going to party. So I'm not shocked on that one. So I don't go on and on about that stuff. But depending on the channel you watch, people do. And it all depends on your point of view on these things. I will say, though, this kind of stuff, to me, when I read through it, yeah, what do you expect from MAGA, right? MAGA congressman tells SNAP people, right? So people who are struggling with food costs, stop smoking crack, right? That's what he's going to say. There he is right there. And if you want to read the full quote here, he says, this is a MAGA person, there are 22 million American households receiving SNAP benefits for groceries at $4,200 per year on average. Try to get your head wrapped around how many pantries you can stock with $4,200 in properly shopped groceries. Any American who has been receiving $4,200 a year of free groceries and does not have a month of groceries stocked should never again receive SNAP because, wow, stop smoking crack. That's according to him. And, the thing is, I think when people like this say these kind of things, they're just completely out of touch with regular people. And when you look through social media, what people are saying regarding, food, regarding SNAP is just like, I work a full-time job. I'm trying to support my family, and it just doesn't pay enough. It doesn't pay enough under, the current Trump shutdown and economy that we're in. And the thing is, when I always talk to you guys about this, when the Trump people, their poll policy is like, hey, you're going to work overtime, and you're going to have no tax on tips, and you're going to be so great. It doesn't address all the other stuff of like, okay, so if that's your plan, but your plan also includes massively rising healthcare costs and massively rising food costs and tariffs up the wazoo, and then you see your people out, bragging that they're buying stuff in other countries, you see how disconnected this stuff is, and so why we need to talk about it in an honest way. So, it's honestly hard to talk about the Trump stuff all the time because it's a combination of just ridiculously, tomfoolery or clownery or however you want to call it. And then you have to wade through all the misinformation out there. And I'll just give you an example. Oftentimes when I see like MAGA comments in our community, like, they'll say something, they'll make some sort of whatever assertion. And I look it up. I do. I'm like, okay, I'm looking it up. And I just tell you the truth. It's so easy to tell whether these people are liars. And you never know. They could be just really dumb, or they could be purposely lying. You never know for sure. But I'll just say this: when they're putting stuff that's basically out not true, I can see it in the comments. And whenever I Google it, I'm just like, yeah, that's the MAGA. It's like, and it's hard to have these conversations when they're just purposely not saying things that aren't true, or unpurposely. Who knows? However you want to say it. Either way, they're putting out stuff that's not true out there. So that's my thoughts on this, and I just try my best with you guys and just talk to you like a real person. And I appreciate you coming back every day. So I'll catch you all in the next video.